of that talk, I think it was the community involvement. It just doesn't happen or remain in place by itself. It's important for many of our sites. We work with it, but there's got to be an effort to keep it going. And the one about, Lance is the next speaker, so he's going to talk to us about the ecological character issues here and how the wetlands could meet the criteria, if I understand it, and other implications, etc. And he's talking on behalf of himself and Lisa, who's not here, unfortunately, as you mentioned earlier. So welcome, Lance.
Thank you. Yeah, I suppose in the development of the program, we wanted to sort of work through each of the elements around international significance of wetlands, and also, given that Ramsar is a large part of that, examine the issues that, how you go about listing, what the reasons are, and what the various aspects are. And ecological character is one of those, and we've been using that as one way of helping describe what we have out here, to explain some of the values that we've got, and also form our management as well around the sorts of areas that we are working on. And I'm not going to talk about the land management program that's going on, looking after the plants and animals, looking at weed control, pest control. That's all happening. Also our restoration efforts around things like growling grass frogs. Our World Wetlands Day program this year involved releasing southern pygmy perch into the wetlands, and then swiftly following that the southern purple spotted gudgeons. Both species hadn't been seen for 50 or 100 years in the area. So that's happening as well. But I'm just going to sort of, I suppose, run the thesis of what are the various listing criteria that the site might meet in relation, and how that then reflects on the ecological character. We are very lucky in terms of our restoration program of the site to be guided by the work that Helen Aston did in the late 50s and early 60s on the species, but also her marvellous photos of the site. So these are her photos from that period, when she ran a whole program of looking at the vegetation of the site, and that's been a really important tool that we've been able to use and come back to. But pictorially, it's also very useful. But given that we've got a 9,000 hectare estate here, it's very hard to get out to the sites. I've created a full program. You're not going to get out of this room, get out there too soon. So I thought I'd show you a few pictures of the site that we've been taking with drones across the site in the last 12 months or so. And you can see, large patches of vegetation, open water. There's reeds, the red gums around the spit, the islands, as the water level comes up. Various reeds, juncus, in places typha, cane grass, in fact in this sort of zone here. Hard to see, but there's actually a cane grass zone out in front of us here. This is what cane grass looks like close up. Unfortunately no live red gums there, but that's our aim, is to get some red gum cane grass wetlands re-established. So we're fortunate to have those processes happening, natural processes, as well as some of our restoration work pushing them towards those issues. So in terms of ecological character, it's a combination of those ecosystem components, processes and benefits. And Peter will talk a little bit more about this in his talk following me. But they really help to characterise the wetland at a particular point in time. And usually that character is actually considered over a period of time, not necessarily 1982 when a lot of Victoria's wetlands were listed, for instance, but really maybe a period before and after specific listing. And I suppose in practical terms, the ecological character is linked to the criteria, the Ramsar criteria that the site may or may not meet. So that's what I'm going to go through, and you've already seen the listings of criteria now, at least twice, of what the criteria are. And so, yeah, the criterion 1 is about a representative or a natural or near wetland type, or in fact a rare or unique example. We think that we have a sort of a representative sample here of a natural and recovering wetland. There's actually 30 odd wetlands in the site, from very small 2 hectares up to almost 1,800 hectares, which is Winton Swamp out there. There are multiple Ramsar wetland sites, so as well as EVCs, as well as CORIC, and as well as and a couple of other schemes, Ramsar has particular wetland types. And here we've got 5 natural wetland types and also 4 created ones that Ramsar recognises, but most of them are in fact in the seasonal intermittent freshwater marshes or lakes category. And the wetlands here contain the sort of largest area of these types of wetlands, wetland type P, both in the region and the wider catchment. And that wetland type's not well represented in other Ramsar sites, nor is it in this actual Victorian riverina bioregion. And there's also a index of wetland condition scheme that DECA developed, and we had the site assessed in 2013, and 19 out of those 30 wetlands, which is right down the bottom, were actually classified as excellent by that system. And we actually hope in the coming year we're going to get some IWC training soon, the eco team here, and we're going to go out and repeat that so that we've got some additional data and use that as a way of measuring how we continue to improve the site. The second one really, the second criteria is about what vulnerable species a site might exist. And again, other sites can use this same criteria just for their sort of management and identification of what the species might be. There are 10 species, or at least 7 listed EVCs on site. And there's 10 species that are EPVC listed that are present on the site regularly, or in fact permanently. We're also in the process of rewilding, as I mentioned, the growling grass frog, and also southern pygmy perch and some southern purple spotted gudgeon. We actually did our fish surveys last month I should say, in May, and we were able to pick up specimens of the pygmy perch and purple spotted gudgeons that we'd released into the wetlands, into the permanent sites, not into the big water bodies out here. And they haven't bred yet because it's not their season, but we hope to repeat that in spring after they have bred, so that we'll be picking up those species, but also controlling carp at the same time, removing carp. We've also got 29 species on site that are listed by the Victorian FFG Act, which again are not part of Ramsar, but obviously important for Victoria. And I did mean to say, someone was asking me earlier, the site here is regarded as a natural features reserve under the Crown Land system, so it's a state owned by Victoria and managed by a committee of management. Dennis is the chair currently, but it's also recognised by the national program as well as a part of the national reserve system. Yeah. So in terms of what the land is like. That's interesting. These are the 7 EVCs across the site that are regarded as significant in terms of being endangered, vulnerable or depleted. I won't go into those. I am trying to save some time that we've... the earlier MC, you might have noticed, let run a bit much. Criteria 3 is around whether a site might have a hotspot, a biological hotspot, and we have here the endemic swamp yabby. In fact, it was its type locality is on Nelson Road, right adjacent to the wetlands, and we have the swamp yabby here, and that's recently been identified and separated from normal Xerox destructor. And also our site actually supports a lot of species, so something like 300 fauna species and 850 flora species, native species, and that actually is more than some nearby Ramsar sites. The fourth category is around supporting species that in critical life stages. So there is an argument that unfortunately the site is, well, not unfortunately, the site is ephemeral. It has a particular nature because of that, but it doesn't act as a drought refuge. But because it is ephemeral, it does support specific animals in important phases of their life. So as the wetland fills and wets, we get a very sharp increase in the numbers and the species diversity on site. It's potentially also a site for Latham snipe and Australian bittern, and we're actually working with BirdLife Australia to get a bittern program up and actually establishing some listening stations and do some specific studies around trying to identify bittern on site, because a lot of our surveys to date, which is very thankful for BirdLife Murray Goulburn, Pat's in the room somewhere, doing monthly surveys of our water birds, but to identify birds like Australian bittern and snipe, we need specific programs to look at that. But yes, and the fifth criteria, while we don't meet this, is around supporting large numbers of water birds, 20,000. We do observe large numbers of birds from regularly over the time frame. So these are grey teal, and there was at one stage 10,000 on site. But we also have virtually a whole suite of species that move in and regularly over the hydrological cycle. So when we were doing our fish surveys at the beginning of the week, we noticed there was only a few pelicans. By the end of the week, there was a half a dozen or 20 building up. And then in a couple of following weeks after that, we noticed very large numbers of pelicans had moved in. And in 2016 and 17, we had about 5,000 pelicans on site at one stage. Luckily, they're my great workers because they scoop up the carp that unfortunately do build up in large numbers. Criterion 6 is around supporting 1% of a species or subspecies of water bird, and there have been some estimates of the numbers of Latham snipe on the site in the past, and the 1% threshold a few years ago, it might not be the right number anymore, was about 300, so potentially meets that criteria as well. And there may be other species on site that are more cryptic that we hope to find. The other one in terms of criterion is criterion 8 around fish and providing an internationally important site. And I said, while we might not meet this site, we do have fish present, native fish. They are in permanent water bodies. We've got Murray cod and golden perch both present, and the Murray cod breed regularly every year. And we now have listed pinging perch and purple-spotted gudgeons on site, and plans to work on other species such as the flat-headed galaxis and potentially blackfish as well. So they're criteria that we may meet in the sort of future. The ones that we haven't really evaluated are around other aspects of sort of breeding locations for native fish, and also for other species that are non-avian or fish species, although when we come to consider that, one of the non-avian species may be the the swamp yabby. So in summary, yeah, we can just see that going through and trying to identify how a site might meet those Ramsar criteria, whether it's for a Ramsar site or not, is a really useful tool of trying to summarise what the wetland is and what its values are, and then how we can use management to make sure that that continues. And that's me. Thank you.
Thanks, Lance. That was great. I'm curious about your claims of 300 snipe. That thing doesn't work.
It's for the recording.
Oh, sorry. Yes, that thing does work. What was the count of snipe that you've had?
Yeah, so that was the work that was done to establish our monitoring and management strategy. So some years ago in 2010. So yeah, that was the figure that had been put into that document. So yeah, I can't tell you much more detail about it at this.
Yeah, it'd be good to follow up with
Yeah.
you about that one. Because from the national monitoring we've been doing, even our biggest sites have never exceeded the 1%. So yeah, I'm just really interested in the record because it's highly significant. Yeah. Yeah, thanks if you don't mind. Cheers.
Clearing our criteria.
Ah well, yes, still.
Very specific question. You had a very specific question. Yeah, it's working. Okay, cool. The grey teal population, it had like a year with peaks of. Was that one individual year? Was that?
Yeah, so given this is an ephemeral site, we really only get water birds in large numbers when we've got water present. So, we really don't have a long history of the hydrology. So one way around that is to develop a water balance model, which we've now done, and so we can actually measure how long water might last once the site's filled. But yeah, we've had fills in 2010 and 2016, 17, and then 21, 22 and 23, the La Nina years we've just had, and we still obviously have...
Mike, we can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Yes. The question was, yeah, we saw various peaks, and was that a particular year? And yes, it was. I suspect it was 2010 when we had water. We had a very big event and the site filled. And we've really only had 3 filling cycles within that time frame. And we really only see water birds during that period of water. And yeah, we expect that we're actually even receiving water a week or so ago. We were getting water inflows into the site, and we expect that there'll be water into spring, and actually our water bird populations will build up quite nicely this spring. So,
Last one, please.
Totally unrelated to any speaker. Can we between talks have like 5 minutes to stand up and save our bottoms from the chairs?
sure, we can try to give you a minute. Okay, no problem. Thank you.